So I think we can now switch to the next presentation, which is given by Arturo Villiers, antenna calibration working group. Please, Arturo.
Felix, thank you. I will give you now the short presentation about the status on the antenna working group. First, I would like to just give a quick overview of who I am, but those who don't know me, I'm working at the Astronomical Institute of the University of Bern. There I'm also part of the Code AC team. And one of my major topics, which I'm currently investigating, is the REPRO3 and also the analysis of the antenna calibrations and how to use them for GNSS scale determination. So to test, see GNSS, Galileo, Beidou, the different scales, and disclose patterns and see how well they fit. From the antenna working groups itself, we have currently 54 subscriptions for the IGS antenna working group mailing list. We're restricted to the contributing members. And we're also in close collaboration with the IGS reference working group, in particular for the preparation of the antenna patterns for the current IGS reference frames. The antenna working group is responsible for collecting and providing the receiver and the antenna receiver antenna patterns for the IGS. So currently we are maintaining the IGS 14, Antex file, the IGS 14 ATX, and we also have, as was already mentioned by Paul, the REPRO2 Antex file, which is updated on an irregular basis. In addition, we also work in cooperation with the IGS network coordinator, the coordination of the unique IGS receiver and antenna names, as well as the corresponding information on the antenna reference point, which are gathered and then also collected in a single point where the user can access it, so to know to which point exactly the antenna patterns are referring to. Since the last meeting that we had, I think it was 2019, back then we presented that the REPRO3 Antex files included the multi-GNSS and also multi-frequency antenna calibrations, which was quite nice. Due to consistency reason, the IGS 14 Antex for the currently IGS frame, which is still used, we are not able to update the IGS 14 to multi-GNSS calibration. So there we are still stick to the old ones, which is just basically GPS and GLONASS. However, if you receive new calibrations, those are added with the full calibrations. So in 2021, we got 10 new multi-GNSS receiver antenna calibrations from robot calibrations, which include all systems and frequencies. In addition, we also got 2 new receiver calibrations, which are just based on GPS and GLONASS. So for these 2 antennas, we don't have multi-GNSS data. However, most of them these days include multi-GNSS, which is quite nice to see. In addition, this year we could also add 1 new QZSS satellite, where the Cabinet Office of Japan also released the metadata, so we know the phase center offset as well as the antenna pattern for the newest QZSS satellite. Apart from the IGS antenna patterns, we also got recently more and more questions from calibration facilities which asked us how they can become an IGS approved receiver calibration antenna calibration facility. So basically, what do have to fulfill in order the IGS accept their calibrations for the reprocessings. For this, currently, there was not a real guideline available. So the AWG started an effort to create a guideline for the facilities who want to contribute to the IGS, to give them an indication, what do we expect in terms of accuracies and what kind of tests do we need in order to analyze their patterns and then decide if they fit for the IGS and can be used or not. I would like to mention that this guideline will not be a strict rule set, but it just gives them a guideline to know what kind of accuracy we expect them to achieve. And of course, we also encourage them that we would prefer to have multi-GNSS calibrations over just GPS or GPS GLONASS calibrations. The future version from the antenna working group is, on the one side, we have now started the ring calibrations. So we ask around the current known calibration facilities, and 8 of them agreed to start the ring calibration. So the idea is that we select 1, 2, or 3 antennas. This is still to be discussed, which then will be calibrated by each calibration facilities. And then we can analyze them and compare the individual facilities and also see what is the difference between the different centers and what kind of accuracy and repeatability between the different centers can we actually achieve. So this effort is just started. We will have this year the first kickoff meeting, and it will then be an ongoing work in 2022. So in the next IGS workshop, we hope that we can present not the final results, but present an update on what work has already been achieved up to then. In addition, we also started to create a small group to start a new Antex format, as currently we're still on the very old Antex format 1.4, which is not very suitable for multi-GNSS calibration data. So from this effort, we will now start. And they're also to work on the metadata, which is published by the MGEX community, and to basically, to use this information, just add an additional part, an extension, like a separate extension where we just include the patterns without any metadata, as currently the center of mass is included in the Antex format 1.4, as they refer to the center of mass. We would like to separate them to really be then referred to a antenna reference point, and the center of mass should then be moved out to the metadata information from the satellites. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation.
Thanks so much, Arturo. Yeah, I see at least one question. What's the difference between the IGS 14 and the repro 3 file from slide 3?
Yes. Basically, the difference is then the IGS 14 Antex file. This is referring to the IGS 14 frame. So this includes the old antenna calibrations, which are mostly as GPS and GLONASS, in order to not disturb the long-term time series. And the scale is based on the ITRF 2014 scale. Whereas for the Repro 3 Antex file, the scale is no longer refer actually to the ITRF 2014, but the scale was induced by Galileo. So there we introduced the Galileo disclosed antenna patterns, and GPS GLONASS have been adapted in order to be consistent with Galileo. And this has been used then for the Repro 3 within the IGS. And this was then submitted to the combination center. And now Paul is analyzing, as he has mentioned, that now we see we can contribute to the scale, but we see that we have some discrepancies apparently between SLR and VLBI and GNSS. So that is basically the difference.
Thank you, Arturo. Felix, we have another question on the chat from John Galetzka. He says, I have noticed that older GPS antennas can see some GNSS signals. Is it possible or desirable to recalibrate those older antennas for GNSS?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. From my perspective, yes, it would be desirable to recalibrate those antennas. However, this would have to come from the manufacturers, which then basically ask the calibration facility to recalibrate them. However, one also has to be mentioned that once the antenna calibrations have been used for the current reference frame, we cannot modify them. So even though we already have for the Repro 3, if we have new calibrations, including multi-GNSS, we cannot include them to an already active reference frame Antex file. Because if we would change the patterns, this would also have then an impact on the station coordinates directly. So to make it short, yes, it would be desirable. However, one has to be aware that if we get new patterns, we have sometimes to delay it and can just use them for the next ITRF solution.
Thanks again, Arturo.